Welcome to Gold Derby. I'm senior editor Denton Davidson here with Joe Bastianich, renowned restaurateur, author, and judge on the upcoming season of MasterChef United Tastes of America. Joe, thanks for joining me today. Give us a little preview of what we can expect from this season of MasterChef and explain the theme a little bit and what's different this year.
So after 13 years, it's our 14th season. We've kind of on this theme of American regionality, the greatness. I think that MasterChef in its decade and a half being on television has kind of like chronicled American foodieism. It wasn't the way it was 14 years ago when we started. And I think breaking the country down into four regions really allows us to celebrate the regionality of American cuisine, products, techniques, and just like the people, people could come from the West, they're different than Midwesterners, that are different than Northeasterners, they're different than Southerners. So we celebrate the diversity of the people that make up our country, the products they use when they cook, and the styles of American regional cuisine.
And even though we have this theme this season, we can still expect our favorite aspects of the show, like the cooking challenges, the mystery boxes, the tag
Right.
team challenge.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite challenge that you put the contestants through each season?
Well, I mean, aside from the field challenges, which are always fun, and in fact, really nothing changes. The regionality is a theme. It doesn't really interfere so much with the dynamics to a large extent. They do play to their teams, but only to a certain point. It's still an individual competition. Only one person wins, regardless of where they come from. But that being said, any time of dynamics where you bring up where the contestants have to interact. So the tag team cooking challenge is always a favorite. The field challenges are always great, and the mystery boxes, all the other stuff we do. But we have some of the classics like the wall, and we have some new stuff that we have to cook up every year. So it's always changing, always dynamic.
And I want to talk about your judging style just a little bit. I've interviewed various contestants and winners from the show.
Uh-huh.
They all agree that, Gordon has been perceived as this hothead, but he's not really in person. And they say Aarón is the softie, but you're in fact the scariest judge. You're the one that they never know what you're thinking because you have sort of this deadpan delivery. Is that your intent to keep them guessing?
I think it's just kind of how I am. Deadpan would be maybe a bit extreme. I think that since the beginning and it's evolved over the years, I keep it all business. Like I treat my job and my life is to run restaurants and to judge food and cooks, and I keep the good news good and the bad news straight, and I kind of do it the same way with the contestants of MasterChef. So it kind of brings them almost into a bit of a professional world because I would treat them the same way I would treat any cooks in any of my restaurants.
When did your relationship with Gordon develop? And how did you two meet? Because you've been working together for years. Did they ask you to join the show because you're a successful restaurateur, or have you known each other prior? How did that all develop?
Well, Gordon and I are contemporaries in the restaurant business. In the mid to late 90s, when I was opening my first restaurants, he was opening up his. So we knew each other professionally. We came to New York, I went to London, we dined at his restaurant. So we were friends and comrades. And then one day, many years later, he called me up. He said, "Do you ever think of doing television?" And I'd never really done television like this before. And I think his idea was to try to find one of the judges that was not a chef, so he didn't have like three chefs up there. So I was useful in that capacity. I went out, we did some test runs, me and him, and the chemistry worked, and that's kind of how it all began.
What's your favorite part of being on the show? Like, what keeps you coming back each season?
The energy of the contestants. It's like we really live it in first person. Like every year, it's going to be like, who's going to be this year's MasterChef? It's about what's the theme this year? Who are the guest judges? It's just so exciting. Every day on the set is a new adventure, and we develop real relationships with these contestants that sometimes relay into professional relationships afterwards. And you become invested in their future and their success in the program and in life. So it's like the real deal.
Is there one thing or one dish that you would have a chef prepare for you? Just the most basic thing to know, like, okay, this chef has the basics to cut it.
Yeah, there's like this simple, the more difficult, like spaghetti pomodoro, linguine with clam sauce, an omelet, a perfectly cooked mid rare fillet. Like those simple things tell the world about your experience and ability as a cook.
This just came to me. But so many times I see, I'm not a chef, but so many times I see on just as a viewer now in these competitions, someone says, "Oh, I'm going to make risotto in 30 minutes." I can't tell you how many times I've seen someone go home and with risotto. What is it about that dish that they keep wanting to do it, and what's so
It's
different?
like it's like the guillotine of the guillotine of MasterChef. I don't know why. I think that in the perception of these cooks, it's somehow super gourmet and something very restauranty because people don't really cook risotto at home, so they feel like they're trying to step up their game. And as easy as risotto is to cook, it's also very difficult because it's really all about technique. You have very few ingredients and you really have to know what you're doing. And it really takes all of 22 to 24 minutes to do it. And there's no shortcuts. And it's either right or it's wrong. And I think they do it because they want to show us how ambitious or good they are. And it usually winds up being a disaster.
And what's your biggest pet peeve or something that drives you crazy that you see chefs doing?
Under seasoning.
Under seasoning.
Under seasoning, not working with a clear and a very organized bench. So cleanliness and organization, under seasoning, and using too much fire, too much, the range top's too high on hot. Very rarely do you turn a range up all the way. Most of the time it's half or lower. These guys just fire it up, cook everything full blast. Those are three big mistakes.
Okay. And we love our predictions here at Gold Derby. We predict awards and we predict all types of reality shows like this one. How easy is it for you to spot a winner? At what point each season do you start to get an idea of this person is the one I think is going to take it?
You know, even between us judges, and we don't talk about it, I think on the audition level, we each pick out our horse every year who think we you know who makes it to the apron level. So we each have so we kind of have an instinct, and usually one of the three of us is right. So we have a good idea sometimes. Not always.
What does it usually take to become a successful contestant on this show?
Aside from having some cooking talent and some basic skills, you have to be able to listen, take direction from the judges, understand the theme or the real concept of the challenges. You have to play with your head and your skills, and you have to be a student.
And you grew up in your parents' Italian restaurant in Manhattan, and then you took a different route in your career. What pulled you back into food and restaurants?
I grew up. I was lucky enough to go to college and go to business school, and then work on Wall Street. I think but I grew up in a restaurant family, and back in the '70s, maybe it wasn't so glam, but it was always very entrepreneurial. So at a certain point, after being in the corporate washing machine, I thought that I wanted to be in charge of my own destiny. And being in the restaurant business is certainly that. You are an entrepreneur at the truest and the most raw level, and your success or failure depends on what you do every day. And I wanted to do that.
And you don't necessarily call yourself a chef, but you definitely
No,
have this.
I'm not a chef at all,
But
but
I have a question though. If you were thrown into a competition with Gordon and Aarón, what's the one thing you would make to put
well,
yourself in the running?
I think I could easily predict that I would win. And even though I'm not a chef, because being a chef means you're like that. The chef comes from the French military word. You're a commander of a brigade of people. Being able to cook well is a different skill set altogether. And in that level, I consider myself on par with my two friends. What would I do to beat those guys? Well, I know what they would cook. So I would probably go to my strength, some of the simple Italian foods that I've eaten my whole life, and just depend who's judging, but appeal to simplicity, flavors, product.
What do you think they would cook? You said you know what they would cook.
I mean, you know what Gordon does. He would do some sort of a fish with some sort of a fancy pan sauce with three different types of vegetables and some sort of a buttery mashed potatoes. Aaron would do some interpretation of a Mexican kind of mole steak rubbed, plated, three-star version of his mama's Mexican cuisine. And I would come in with the Italian stuff. And that's how it would play out.
Well, that would be super fun to watch. So I hope that does play out sometime. Joe, it's been a pleasure to chat with you today.
Thank
Everyone
you.
can check out MasterChef United Tastes of America on Fox. It premieres Wednesday, May 24th at 8 p.m. Eastern and Pacific. And we'll have all kinds of coverage over at Gold Derby. We got the live blogs, predictions. You can pick who you think is going to win. And Joe, thanks again for sitting down with the Gold Derby today.
Look forward to seeing you on the big screen in a week.
All right. See you.
Bye now.